Welcome to the Empowering Choices Parenting Podcast. My name is Joshua.
I'm Eric.
I am Lucas.
Eric and Lucas are licensed professional counselors. We have created an online community with a website and an app full of parenting resources and courses. Most importantly, all of this is centered around a private community where you can share your struggles with us and others. If you are interested in joining, please check out our website at empoweringchoices.community or search for our app in the App Store by searching Empowering Choices. For a small monthly fee, you receive everything I talked about and you help support the show. Plus, every time someone purchases a membership, we gift a membership on your behalf to someone who otherwise could not afford it. All right, now on with today's show. So today we're going to talk about parenting is not a science, it's an art, and it looks like we have a magic wand on the table, so we'll have to learn about that.
So if parenting is an art, not a science, like how are we defining those terms? What would parenting as a science look like?
Parenting as a science would look like a science experiment.
So you take your child and you stuff him in the test tube and then you add the acetone?
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Don't report me, please.
Well, no.
I don't actually do that to my children.
What that would mean is that you take these certain types of characteristics or elements or whatever it is, and you just do them and put them all together, and boom, your kid is now the perfect going to bed on time, no problems, and it all works out just the way you envisioned it would work out, as if the child were a perfect child and there's never a problem at bedtime ever again.
Wow.
And in our manual we talk about a lot of different tools, a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different types of philosophies and things. And when you're employing all those different components and something's still not right, that's when you've got the magic wand as a way of, you and your partner, you and your spouse, you are deciding together in the teamwork, hey, there's just something not right with Johnny. He's grounded, but he seems like he's given up. Nothing we would normally do, nothing in the relational piece, nothing in the incentive piece, nothing seems to be helping him through this period the way we've seen it go before. Because a part of the structure is you're building in the consequences, but your kids are understanding that they're earning things back. They know they're getting things back. They know that will happen because you're not grounding them forever. You have the time limits, but then there's something still not right. And so together you take that magic wand and you're like, we're just gonna change everything.
For the audience, he's gesturing with the pepperoni stick.
Yes.
By the way.
Yeah, I'm like whirling this thing around.
It's a meat wand.
I think I'm trying to get a better pepperoni stick to appear on the table.
Yes. Well, just so you know, I did just order you some more of the regular ones.
Oh, as we were speaking. Good,
so
thank you.
For the next show, we'll have a regular magic wand.
It is magic.
Yeah.
I waved the wand and Josh ordered the pepperoni
That's right.
sticks. See? It is magic.
Indy, do you hear this?
And I just threw it. Okay. So it...
So I hear you saying, Eric, that some of the things that we recommend parents do in our manual, right, are akin to science, right? There's things that you want to be consistent and predictable, and I'm wondering if parenting is a science and an art?
Well, but the reason I would call it an art is because you have sciencey things in art.
So we use the metaphor of tools a lot, and I think of a car mechanic. Right? When I think of the way the tools we describe, because they're like socket wrenches and stuff. Right? I suppose some of them were carpentry tools. Is being a car mechanic a science or an art?
Oh, from the mechanics that I have known, they're going to say yes, as long as you've got a 5-pound sledgehammer that brings the final piece over the edge when nothing else works.
So is that their magic wand?
It is. I was actually going to talk about that.
So
There are
Yeah.
times where a car mechanic, those that I have known, will say sometimes you just got to beat on the engine until it gets the idea that it needs to do something different.
The engine gets the idea?
Yeah, because nothing else you can do, nothing else you found, nothing else will work, and you just beat on that thing, and then suddenly it all works. And they
So
don't
we're
question
not
it.
advocating beating on your children with a 5-pound sledgehammer, just to be clear.
Well, it was your metaphor, and you were the one who said mechanic, so I kind of figured.
I'm
yeah.
more than happy to correct my own metaphor when it's drifting into, we do not advocate beating your children with a hammer.
It's an art because within art, you have parameters, you have guidelines, you have different types of things. If you're going to paint with oil, there's a certain type of guidelines and parameters. If you're going to do photography, there's guidelines.
Like the rule
and
of thirds. And how you
Yes,
frame
exactly.
Stuff. But so much is still artistic about it.
Well, but see, with photography, you have these 10 guidelines. They're like the 10 laws of photography. Well, but they're really not, because the best photos that are out there break so many of them. But the reason that they're the rules of photography is to help people avoid them as they're learning how to then go to an advanced place where you would break them. And that's where it's not a science, it's an art, but it has structural components that help you build within that type of a venue to become better and better at that venue.
Well, when I think about, the artist Pablo Picasso, right? He was a very good technical artist, and he intentionally chose to break all the rules to do the things that he's famous for. So when you see his early art, it was very technical and realistic. And I don't know, I'll say classical, it's probably not the best word, but he knew all of these fundamentals so that he can go on and, I don't know, use his magic wand and kind of break some of these rules in an artistically expressive way.
I probably should have seen his earlier works. I hate Picasso.
Sure, well, he chose a form of artistic expression you don't appreciate, which is fine.
Right, exactly.
But he knew all the rules before he broke them.
Yeah, you're
And
making
that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
Exactly, you're making a really good point. And so this is why parenting is an art. Is you're learning some of the different things that are guidelines and structural pieces and rule of thumb pieces, but you have to take into account that you have a living organism that has a will of its own. I can teach and have, Indy knows how to sit. I will never tell you he will sit 10 out of 10 times. I would tell you he will sit probably 9 out of 10 times, because at some point he's going to choose not to sit. Even though the structure is sit means sit.
Right, yeah. No variation in that rule set.
And the thing is with our children, because we're so much more complex than animals, you don't know what may be affecting them in outside areas. You don't, even internally within themselves, growing pains or, physical problems you don't know about yet.
Sure.
One of my past clients had an AVM, and
A what?
An AVM, and I won't be able to come up with the acronym.
It stands for something.
It does.
And it means approximately
Yep, Josh is looking it up right now, so he's going to help me with that.
medical.
It's medical.
Okay.
It's
a medical diagnosis.
generally appears in the brain or in a leg.
That sounds bad.
Vein.
Artery of
see?
venous malformation.
That sounds terrible. So you have like blood vessels that are broken.
Yes, and
Got it.
they do
Yeah.
some really bad things, and it occurred in that person in a different part of that person's body, but it's going to show up as growing intense pain.
Oh, because this was a growing child and having pain.
Right,
And they're like, oh, it's
right.
growing pains. And it's like, no, it wasn't.
No, it's different. So you're also going to have things that are, in their outside world. One of my kids, several of my kids have had, that I've worked with as clients, have had really bad situations at school. And nobody had any idea that was going on, but it was affecting them within the house. And the things that were normally very helpful to help them learn with their behavior, it wasn't working.
The normal rules weren't
The normal
working.
rules, the normal consequences weren't having the effect that they have had in the past. And it wasn't until we determined what it was in the classroom that was affecting them and addressed that it then went back to normal. Sometimes that means you have to alleviate some of the consequences that they may be under to be able to find out what else is going on, which is where that magic wand comes in. But it doesn't come in a way of, okay, you're grounded for 3 weeks, so we're just going to remove that. You have to kind of use that teamwork tool and creativity piece to where you're like, okay, what can we do in this situation to be able to maybe shorten consequences, or maybe the consequences are still there, but we increase things that we would then do with our kids, or maybe allow them a little more privileges as you're trying to ascertain what it is that's, really under the surface and going on in a different part of that world.
Yeah. So you're really coming up with a customized solution.
And that's why it's an art, because you may not do the same thing for another child when they get grounded, but then for another child, when they, have some kind of a situation in life or an attitude, or, I keep going to grounded, but they just may have a sudden attitude. And because the relationship between you and your children is so important, you knowing your children, and I have lots of parents who will say, I know my kid, but it's different to actually be able to recognize their face and then actually know who they are and who they're growing to be. You may say, oh, well, I know my kid, they're like this, and then you're going to be surprised, as many parents I've had, when the kid says, no, I'm actually like this. And I'm just talking about favorite color.
Yeah.
My 3-year-old's favorite color has already changed.
Right. And so you have to be in that 3-year-old's world to know when it changes. So you have to spend time with them. This is what gives you a huge sense of when to use the magic wand. You have to be connected with your kids in some kind of a relational way. This does not mean I just take them to the store with me when I go. That doesn't count.
Or that could theoretically be part of what you're talking about, but it is not by itself.
You just nailed an exception. I only had one parent that said, actually, one of my stepboys asks me to go, and that's where we do all the talking, is on the way while we get the groceries and on the way back. That's an exception to that.
Right, but the boy is asking to go, not being drug along, because that's just the way things are.
If you just are dragging your kids along, it's not going to cover the same thing. It's like, what is your kid like to do, and how are you joining them there? We talk about it in the manual. It doesn't mean that you have to like everything they like. I just could not continue to play Lego, Batman, Avengers, any of those games for very long. It was not a good thing for my stimulation, because I don't do well with those puzzle games, and then I get bored, and then it gets bad.
This was you and your son?
Yes, it was.
But you attempted.
I attempted. Now, he wanted to play Pokemon, and I'm a Magic player, and there's a big difference if you understand those two games. And I resisted for a while, and I went, you know what? I need to do this.
For him.
And so I went and got a deck, and he already had his deck. And so then we started playing Pokemon, and, one day we're playing, and he's losing and losing and losing. and he goes, one more game. I'll get you in one more game. I'm like, we've been playing for 4 hours and you haven't won yet. Are you sure? He goes, yes, I'll get you this time, and he didn't. But he kept wanting to come back and play,
And that was the important part.
That's the thing, because you're learning about them, you're talking to them, you're interacting with them, you're learning their 70% nonverbal language. This is the piece that's key when you're looking to use the magic wand. Something's just not right. And you have learned this by interacting with them. You do the exact same thing with coworkers.
You lost me.
I know. Here's what I mean. In the workplace, we get to know our coworkers. We get to know our coworkers so that we can predict what kinds of things or moods or situations that they do through their body language.
Okay.
We know which person you're not going to do this with or to, or which person is not going to do well to do this with or to. That's a simplistic way of what we should be doing with our kids.
And I'm going to guess that maybe the getting to know your coworkers may be more of a male tendency, and possibly a woman might say, I do that with my friends.
I'm not sure they would say that. I don't know. Friends, yes, but we've both worked in a very female dominated field for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I've seen them do the exact same thing.
With
Yeah.
coworkers.
Yeah. So
I've been enjoying my metaphors today. The thing that I was thinking of as you're talking about, you have to know your child to know when something's off, would be like being a detective, right? Is detective work an art or a science? It's the same kind of thing we're talking
Exactly.
about. And it applies even more closely because you're observing and noticing and looking for clues and
Yep.
seeing what's off.
Yes.
And then trying to draw your conclusions that way.
I think pretty much any Sherlock Holmes film ever made will, reinforce that. It's an art.
And then you have to take all the different pieces of advice and information, but find what pieces are going to solve your particular problem. So like we have our 8-month-old has been peeing out the diaper at night, right? And so
I can laugh because I'm not living it, right?
So every time I tell someone that, they're like, oh, well, that's because you need to use Huggies, or oh, Huggies is the worst. You should use
okay.
Pampers, or oh, you need to do this, or you,
You get a
need to do
million
that.
pieces
Right.
of unsolicited
Right.
advice.
And,
Thank you very much.
but through experimentation myself, I go, oh, when he wears Pampers, this happens. When he wears the Honest Company, this happens. And so I finally determined for our child, Huggies and having it really tight, and it just that works for us. But someone else said, oh, I hated that we always peed out of those, And so
your solution didn't work for somebody else.
someone else,
Yeah.
but you have to do that detective work, and so it's kind of like that same thing applies emotionally and behaviorally as they get older. You have to solve those problems. It may not be as easy as going, oh, the bed's wet, that didn't work. You may have to do a little more digging. But yeah, that kind of sounds like what we're talking about there.
That's exactly just like what we're talking about there. Especially the more children that you have, the more chances that you're going to have very different slices. And so some of them you may be able to talk to, very straightforward, very blunt, and that works well. Another one, you talk to them like that and you just crushed them. It's one of the problems I have with a lot of parenting material worldwide right now is that people have experienced a bad situation in childhood, and now they're making it a science that everyone is going to follow to save every child from the bad experience they went through. And I've even heard some of those people give examples of, they're all against timeout, and then they sent their strong-willed daughter to sit on her bed in her room until she would calm down.
Not identifying that was timeout.
Right. And I'm like, dude, that's a timeout. And they're like, but I didn't put her in timeout. But I did come back and sit down and see if she was ready to talk. And when she wasn't, I went away and said I'd come back later. And I'm like, that is a timeout.
Particularly if she wasn't allowed to do anything while, you were waiting for her to be able to talk to you.
And she wasn't.
Timeout.
And so, yes, you have to get to know your child. You have to have an increasingly growing chest of tools. Our tools are there to help give you springboards, because just like Josh said, certain situations that he's finding coming up with his son, they're not going to work for other people because other kids are different. I mean, we're just talking about the physical ability of peeing, and yet it's different.
Yeah.
And so you would think that one type of a technology of diapers could handle every situation with a human being doing that one bodily function.
Nope.
But it doesn't. So how much more so when you're talking about the human psyche that is growing continually,
Changing.
developing, changing, developing, moving towards a sense of self, moving towards personality, moving towards adulthood and the changes there. This is not going to work to have, this is the way it's been done, this is the way it was always done, this is what was done to me, this is what's worked for thousands of years. Because if we go back, it really didn't for everybody. It did for some, but you're going to find a lot of crushed, run over bodies in the wake of those 1,000 years.
And so when we're talking about the magic wand tool, it's these are the standards we've established in our house, and the magic wand is I'm breaking the rules to explore something else. And part of what we've discussed, I know at some point in time, is how you communicate to the child what you're doing.
We
right?
talk about that in the manual.
Right.
Because there are definite ways that you want to approach that, because all the siblings are going to be watching
Oh, sure.
and talking.
Right. Johnny got the rules broken for him, so
Yep.
I'm next for my benefit.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's just a part of kid emotional thinking. And so the way that it can be framed up to the child, to the family, to the siblings, we provide some help and some guidance in there as to how you can do that, and it just doesn't look like Johnny's the favored kid.
Sure, right? Yeah, Johnny didn't get disciplined this time, and all of the, I have to say consequences, but all of the thinking that flows from that of, Johnny's the favorite kid. How do I get mine? How do I manipulate the rules so the parents use the magic wand on me to my benefit?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's not, it's an art, as they say.
It's an art.
You've been listening to the Empowering Choices Parenting Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, we would encourage you to visit our website at empoweringchoices.community. For a small monthly fee, we offer a website full of parenting courses and resources. You also have the ability to connect with parents going through the same struggles you are in a safe and private environment. Every time you purchase a membership to our site, we give away a membership to a parent in financial need. Help yourself become a better parent while helping others gain access to important parenting materials by supporting our podcast. Check us out at empoweringchoices.community or in the App Store by searching Empowering Choices. We'll see you on our next episode.